This is an image of Rick's restaurant in Taos, New Mexico. As you see, the daily special is breakfast sopapillas. Now that's a fried Indian bread with beans and cheese and eggs and tortillas and salsa. It's quite delicious. But there's a message up there that seems to be much bolder, greater in size, bigger in font, although it is clearly handwritten, than what they're selling. And that is that Rich wants you to know that love brings happiness and happiness brings love. This is an underlying philosophy of this restaurant that makes it a good place to be because it sets the tone for what you would expect when you go there. This talk today is going to be very different from any lecture I've ever given because I'm always asked about medication, about diagnosis. People want to know what we do here at Good Sam in the emergency room, how we deal with mental health crises. But today, I'm going to review and explain how some great thinkers from the past have given their perspective to dealing with life's problems and life's stresses. This advice has been carefully culled from some of the most inspiring minds. Some of the advice will come from centuries past, and some will be quite contemporary. We can learn from the work that they've done, and it can inspire us and give us direction to develop our own resilience. Our goal is to help you foster resilience, to help you develop coping skills, and to make you a champion of your life in this short time we're going to spend together, and to use these skills to master your everyday, day-to-day problems. I'm going to show you an adaptive view of stress. I'm going to try to change your perspective, to challenge your form and the content of your thinking, and I will give you information how to rethink some things as grand and dramatic as life itself. So why should we cover this? Why should we talk about this? Well, there are people that have different philosophies of life. For example, you may be familiar with this guy. In every life, we have some trouble. But when you worry, you make it double. So don't worry, be happy, just in case you didn't know exactly who it was. So in this world we live in, there are many people that are happy. But in the exact same world, in similar circumstances, there are people that are very unhappy. There's an increased frequency of depression, panic, and suicidal ideas. We're going on at least 15 years of consecutive increases in the suicide rate. Our society has moved from using statements like keep a stiff upper lip, or keep calm and carry on, or you can deal, to more of a reality show type of world where people are given attention for their extreme dramatics and out of control behaviors. We are now in a reality-based culture and a confessional culture where people seem to be praised for coming forward and sharing their weaknesses, where previous generations were urged to put aside their weaknesses and move forward. We have a group of young people that have a very decreased ability to tolerate stress. They're often renamed the snowflake generation because they're so fragile. They're asked for things like safe places, which are defined as a place where anyone can relax, be self-expressed without fear of being made to feel uncomfortable, unwelcome, or unchallenged. Why do we need to feel unchallenged? In my experience, we have seen a constant flow of young adults coming into our emergency room telling me that they feel their lives are not worth living. There's a dramatic increase in mental health crises, and it's worse in children now than at any time in history. So in times like this, people look to mental health professionals to offer relevant and accurate advice. My name is Dr. Louis Teitelbaum. I am a psychiatrist, and I'm the chairman of Psychiatry at Good Sam. I'm a cancer survivor for 21 years. I've had my own difficulties, and I've overcome them. And today we're going to cover the work of Dr. Scott Peck, Viktor Frankl, the philosopher Nietzsche, Joel Osteen, as well as others. My generation found much inspiration from the work of Dr. Peck. Dr. Peck's best-selling book, The Road Less Traveled, which was released in the very early 80s, is described on Wikipedia as a description of the attributes that make a fulfilled human being. It's based largely on his own experience as a psychiatrist and as a person. And he presents a philosophy of life. And it's very simple. Life is difficult. This is a great truth, one of the greatest truths of life. It is a great truth because once we truly see this truth, we are able to transcend it. Once we truly know that life is difficult, once we truly understand and accept it, then life no longer has to be difficult. Because once it is accepted, the fact that life is difficult no longer matters. Seems quite simplistic, but what he's saying is, if you accept difficulties as part of life, then you will live your life by managing your difficulties. In other quotes, he says, most do not fully understand this truth about life, that life is difficult. Instead, they moan, more or less incessantly, noisily, or subtly, about the enormity of their problems, their burdens, and their difficulties, as if life was supposed to generally be easy, as if it should be easy. They voice their belief, noisily or subtly, that their difficulties represent a unique kind of difficulty and affliction that should not be, and has somehow been especially visited upon them, or maybe just upon their families, or their tribe, or their class, or their nation, or their race, or their species, but nobody else has these same problems. Dr. Peck proposed that what we need to cope with life's problems is a disciplined approach. Essential discipline for emotional, spiritual, and psychological health. And he marks it as the ability to delay gratification, to accept responsibility for oneself and one's actions. There are other philosophers from the late 1700s who have also given us advice that is somewhat similar. Friedrich Nietzsche says, to live is to suffer, but to survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. Nietzsche's most famous statement was that he who has a why to live can bear with any how. Now this deserves repeating. He who has a why to live can bear with any how. So in today's world, what I find is that many people do suffer setbacks and stresses, failing a course, having a breakup, a car accident, a financial setback. But everybody now believes that any obstacle becomes a trauma, and they suspect that they will end up getting post-traumatic stress disorder. The truth is that most people deal with traumas, even great losses, by grieving them, by coming to terms with them, by eventually returning to themselves after experiencing a period of time where they are saddened, are upset, and do experience the grief. And that is normal. PTSD is an abnormal response that includes adverse coping mechanisms, and it needs specific symptoms, such as intrusive distressing memories, dreams, avoidance of external reminders, hypervigilance, alteration in mind, in moods, and survivor guilt. So this statement of Nietzsche was most poignantly affecting another individual named Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl tells us that everything can be taken from a man, and he wrote this in the 60s, so pardon that he's using the term man, but he meant at that point the general population. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing. The last of human freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given circumstances, to choose one's own way. Viktor Frankl can inspire us. We can draw inspiration. He was the founder of a type of psychological treatment called logotherapy. He kept telling us other things. The way in which a man accepts his fate and all of its suffering that it entails, the way in which he speaks up or takes up his cross, offers ample opportunity, even under the most difficult circumstances, to add a deeper meaning to his life. Here lies the chance for a man to either make use of or to forego the opportunities of obtaining the moral values that a difficult situation might afford him. Frankl felt that in the current world, the greatest ailment was a lack of meaningfulness in people's lives. To quote him, he says, "As the struggle for survival has subsided, the question has emerged, survival for what? Ever more people have the means to live, but no meaning to live for." Many sociologists and anthropologists will tell you that we are clearly living in the greatest time of the Homo sapien. There is the least risk of physical violence. There is the greatest opportunity for justice, freedom, equality, advancement. There is the highest standard of living of any time in history. But more than anything, violence has been greatly subdued in our world compared to all previous generations. It's not gone, but we are living in a time of tremendous prosperity. Frankl tells us what man actually needs is not a tensionless state, not to have nothing to do or nothing to worry about, but rather to strive and struggle for a goal that's worthy of them. So people ask me, what gives Frankl the moral authority to tell us what kind of meaning or that meaning is so important? Well, Frankl was a psychiatrist in the 1930s in Vienna. He ran an anti-suicide program in a hospital. He was very successful, very well respected, but he was a Jew. And when the Nazis took control of Austria, he was removed from his job. He was eventually moved to a ghetto and then moved to a concentration camp. In the concentration camp, less than 1 out of 30 people survived. And what he reported was that he noticed that even under these inhumane and torturous circumstances, there were still some people who acted humanely. There were some people who chose this most difficult time of their life to act in a certain way. One of the examples that he gives is when they were finally liberated, many people took vengeance on the guards in the concentration camp, and no one would fault them for doing that under such a circumstance. However, he said that his true beliefs were nonviolence, and therefore he chose not to take out any aggression on any of the people in the camp. So Frankl said that even under these horrible circumstances, the one thing that you cannot take away is how you choose to respond. The last of one's freedom is your attitude in a certain situation. If Frankl was here today, he might ask you, what is the purpose that you live for? Some believe that the real opportunities of life have passed, yet in reality, there's opportunity for change and to make victory out of all of life's circumstances. So let me ask you, do you have a strong why? Well, here at Catholic Health Services, we have core values. We have a belief that underlies the actions that we take. We have the characteristics and behaviors that motivate us. These include the mission statement, which says, we are who we say we are. We are and we act in accordance with the splendor and truth of the Catholic moral teachings and of Catholic values. These include integrity, compassion, accountability, respect, and excellence. And all of us here strive for this every day. So what is your mission statement? Frankl might say, don't seek happiness, seek meaningfulness, and then happiness will find you, right? But can you clearly define what are your motivations? Do you have a strong why in your life? Can you have something that's important enough to you that it will allow you to overcome some great challenges? Remember, even in challenges, you can deal with a great stress, be grateful that you've overcome an obstacle, but you can still be frustrated, sad, and angry because of changes you had to face. I don't feel that you have to be sad or happy. I feel that there's plenty of room to share both of these feelings when you have any experience in your life. So what about the kids today? We all know that they're living a very different life. We talk about FOMO. FOMO, fear of missing out. Your kid is with a parent. They're having a nice dinner out, but they check their social media at the table, of course, and they see that their other friends are at the mall. So suddenly they feel drawn that they're there with their parents, and although they're having fun, maybe they're being isolated, restricted, or broken away from the circle of friends that are at the mall, so they feel this fear of missing out. They believe that they're connected, but as you see, people sit at the table right next to each other and still text each other. So there's an illusion of companionship. Let me point out that there's a wonderful show on Netflix called The Social Dilemma, which explains how artificial intelligence and social media is designed to manipulate individuals. And it's very important that everyone watch that show. Another part of the electronic world is that when we respond on Pinterest or Snapchat, we respond with a carefully cultivated image that we choose to share. However, what you see here is the human facial musculature. It is a highly complex organ that is able to express a huge amount of emotion, and each muscle, tensioned or loosened ever so slightly, is clearly visible to the next person. So I remember a story that someone once told me that they said something to another individual, and that they didn't necessarily believe that what they were saying was cruel, but they did want to have some ability to prod the other individual and upset them. But when they saw the facial expression that that individual had, they realized that they acted cruelly and in a mean way. And this is what is removed when people are sending carefully coiffed images. So today we have a feeling of hopelessness throughout our young adults, a belief that there is not much to live for. I say there's a huge amount to live for, that I have found that I am able to help people obtain goals that they set for themselves that change their lives. Do not be hopeless. Hopelessness is a temporary feeling. I also want to point out that right in our neighborhood, we have experiences with the effects of social media, because in 2010, Alexis Pilkington, who was a senior in our high school, ended her life, and she is felt to be one of the first people in the nation to die due to cyberbullying. Not everybody believes this. We have other good examples in the world. For example, the Honorable Ben Carson, who was the former Secretary of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, says successful people don't have fewer problems. They've just determined that nothing will stop them from going forward. And even in ancient times, not ancient, but like 300 years ago, Goethe said, the moment that one definitely commits oneself, then province moves too. What you think you can do or believe, you can do. Begin it, and action has magic, power, and grace. So if you create a plan, if you have a goal, if you have trouble making a decision, but once you make it, in psychiatry we talk about a formative decision. A formative decision means when you have a difficult situation, when you make a decision on how to overcome it, then all of your future decisions can be made in order to make your first decision work out positively. Even Henry Ford told us, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So therefore, I urge you to think that you can. So a lot of people in this generation are familiar with the movie and the book, The Secret. The Secret proposes that there is this hidden law of attraction that is called the law of creation. And they say that life isn't happening to you. You're actually creating your life. Okay? That if you treat yourself with love and respect, and you will attract people who will show you love and respect. The principle basically says that likes attract, that if you dream or think about something that you really want, you're much more likely to get it. And it does make sense, because if you have some idea of what you want and you have specific goals set for yourself, then you can work towards those goals. And they base this book, The Secret, on what they found in the Bible, because they said that in Matthew, it says that all things whatsoever ye shall ask in prayer, believing, ye shall receive. So they believe that there is a religious basis for imagining a positive future for yourself and therefore receiving it. See yourself living in abundance and you will attract it. Your thoughts can control the universe. Through this law of attraction, you will manifest your desires. It is exactly like placing an order from the catalog. This is a little bit of an oversimplification. I don't want you to think if you want a Ferrari, you're just going to get a Ferrari. However, if you never wanted a Ferrari, you're probably not going to get one. And if you really want one, maybe you'll make decisions in your life that will lead you towards getting a Ferrari. Personally, I'm not that big on Ferraris, but I know a lot of people like them, so we've included that idea here. There are other people that have asked us to think positively. Many people are familiar with Joel Osteen. He is a very, very popular religious figure who inspires us to move positively. For example, choosing to be positive and having a grateful attitude is going to determine how you're going to live your life. For me, this is very similar to what was said by Peck in his first statement where we began this presentation. When you face difficult times, know that challenges are not sent to destroy you, they're sent to promote, increase, and strengthen you. And the shared image on this page can show you how his popular positive statements have grown into a mega church where he can fill Madison Square Garden with people that are very interested in what he has to say. For example, you're not defined by your past. You're prepared by it. You're stronger, more experienced, and you have greater confidence, right? He often says, you wouldn't be who you are without all of the difficult times. Be thankful, even during trials. Some people ask me, can drugs or alcohol help me cope? I propose that drugs and alcohol are the reverse of coping. Coping basically means taking conscious effort to try to solve personal and interpersonal problems, to master, minimize, and tolerate stress. If you're facing difficulties and you choose drugs or alcohol as a coping technique, what you're actually doing is the antithesis of coping. You're delaying and avoiding real coping, okay? In the Jewish religion, if you ask great scholars to try to summarize the religion very briefly or to give a golden rule, many people will say tikkun olam, which literally is translated into repair the world. But actually what it is an aspiration to behave and act constructively and beneficially. It is an underlying philosophy of life that godly qualities should exist throughout the world. Even in Buddhism, which is not actually a religion, and it goes along with other religions, they believe that life does have inevitable suffering, and that suffering has a cause and suffering has an end. And the Eightfold Path represents the teachings of Buddha, who gives you advice on coping with life. Buddhists often sing mantras. I was made familiar with this mantra by the work of Tina Turner, who in her later years started to chant mantras. This particular mantra, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, is easily translated, but however, each word has a much, much deeper meaning. Nam suggests that there is some infinite source of energy in the world, that there are positive actions that should be taken to relieve suffering, that there is an ultimate cause in the world that will lead to happiness in all aspects of life. Myoho suggests that there is some underlying mystic or magical law to the world, that a person is born to all different cultures, and that there are things that are beyond understanding, but the teachings of Buddhism are able to lead you forward. Renge uses the literal term of the lotus flower, but the lotus flower is an example of beauty which emerges from muck and mud, a flower that grows from the worst possible environment but creates great beauty. And Kyo is a recommendation that there are teachings of Buddha that help you understand life. Each person experiences the capability to live a life like Buddha in universal harmony and appreciate the immeasurable value of human life. So if you sit down and you say this to yourself over and over and over and you sing it, it has a positive influence on your overall thought process. This is one of the ways that people try to overcome problems in your life. This is another way of understanding and appreciating gratefulness. The American Indian culture has its own examples of people that advise and direct us to have a meaningful life. Chief Tecumseh, who lived in the central United States, what is Indiana and Oklahoma, was quoted in the 1750s in speaking frequently, saying, "Love your life, perfect your life, beautify all things in your life. Seek to make your life long and its purpose in the service of your people. When you arise in the morning, give thanks for the food and for the joy of living. If you see no reason for giving thanks, the fault only lies in yourself." This is important because we know that people who are grateful for the simple things in life, and let me point out, if we have a blackout and you don't have air conditioning and it's hot, you suddenly become very grateful for air conditioning. If your toilet doesn't flush and you suddenly realize how important a flush toilet is, then you realize that you really should be grateful for these most basic things. Not everyone in the world turns on their faucet and clean, drinkable water comes out. I'd like to point out that Tecumseh, in this beautiful image that I love so much, says, "So live your life that the fear of death can never enter your heart. Prepare a noble death song for the day when you go over the great divide. Sing your death song and die like a hero going home." I do not believe that Tecumseh is in any way urging us to bring our death forward. I think that a death song suggests a review of your entire life, that this is another way of saying, what is it that you want your obituary to say? What is it that you stood for in your lifetime? So the vaccine for COVID is a wonderful thing. This is a magic key for us. This is something that science has given us to reopen our lives. Remember that all of the things that COVID brought have reduced us from the kind of support that we usually find most effective, like meaningful work, peers, financial security. Now that the vaccine is here, I highly recommend that you take it. There is no real reason not to get it. Remember that the vaccine is highly associated with a weight off your shoulders and an irresistible urge to post on social media. I just love Blue Bruce Lee, so his advice is that being able to remain calm is a superpower. So under all circumstances, please try to remain calm. Remember that this is something that we need in the hospital. When the doors open and the ambulance rolls in, we are ready and we are thinking clearly regardless of what the problem is. And that is one of our superpowers here. So in conclusion, the next time you walk through a trinket store and you see a silly painting on the wall, like "Today is a good day," or "Life is not a dress rehearsal," think about them. Find one that's relevant to you. I once bought one that said, "Love grows in houses like this." And when I put it up on the wall, there was a noticeable change in my family. And if you have an underlying philosophy, share it, make it public, tell the people in your life what it is. Nietzsche told us, going back to Nietzsche and Frankl, that which does not kill us makes us stronger, right? Frankl would say, our most tragic moments bring out our greatest opportunities if we have the courage to seize on those tragic moments. And Frankl would also tell you, life ultimately means taking the responsibility to find the right answer to its problems and to fulfill the tasks which it constantly sets before each individual. Very simply, be Teflon, not Velcro. Let things slide off. Don't make them stick. And if you want to quote Dr. Teitelbaum, you can say, life is not the way it's supposed to be. It's the way it is. The way that you cope with it is what makes the difference. If I'm invited to speak again, I'll teach you how to do this. Good Samaritan Hospital is available for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For any further information, you can call us at 631-376-4444 or visit good-samaritan-hospital.org.